please give a warm welcome to one of the Globe Busters, Mr. Jeran Campanella of Jeranism. There he is.
Here.
You're like a ninja.
Awesome.
Good up.
Thanks, guys.
That's not me. It's not me.
Turn it down a little. There we go. Maybe down a little bit more.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
That'd be tremendous. All right. No, still not yet. Any better? No feedback? All right. Doing great, kid, huh? All right, guys, thanks so much. Everyone has been absolutely tremendous. You know, you guys are so gracious and appreciative and polite when I talk to you. It makes these whole events worth it. If it wasn't for that, and even people that may have a different opinion, maybe don't agree with me on some subjects, are still amazing to me. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you to Robbie, obviously, for inviting me this year and all the past years. So just a big thank you to everyone. So let's get straight to the point. I'm going to start with something you may have heard before.
Astronauts to the moon.
So many people don't know why I have that at the start of all my videos. I've had people ask before, you know, what is it saying? What is it from? If you don't know what it's from the movie Coneheads. Here's what's so funny about that. You have to remember, the Coneheads are aliens. They came from another planet. They read the newspaper that astronauts have gone to the moon and think it's hilarious. The joke only works if we haven't been to the moon. The joke doesn't work if we've been there. If we've been to the moon, the joke doesn't make sense. So just to let you know, that's why that is, you know, at the start of all my videos. So this presentation is called, you know, NASA Going Nowhere since 1958. A lot of people know that I did a movie, came out in July, NASA Going Nowhere. Thank you. Thank you. And I think the movie's important for people to watch. It more covers the presidents and how they each are involved. This presentation will be a little more high level, and I'll walk us through exactly what I'll be talking about. But let's start with my opinion of NASA. It's a good start. I think people know that. I also like to read quotes. A lot of people know about that. I think sometimes people say things a lot better than I could ever say it. So Abu al-Hazen said, "The seeker after truth is not the one who studies the writings of the ancients and following his natural disposition puts his trust in them, but rather the one who suspects his faith in them and questions what he gathers from them. The one who submits to argument and demonstration and not to the sayings of a human being whose nature is fraught with all kinds of imperfection and deficiency. Thus, the duty of the man who investigates the writings of scientists, if learning the truth is his goal, is to make himself an enemy of all that he reads, and applying his mind to the core of the margins of its content, attack it from every side." And that's what I like so much about this community, if you want to call it that, content creators, YouTubers, is everyone's on the same page with attacking everything that they can find. Anything they turn up, anything they research, anything they study. It's very easy for them to simply accept it. That's what we're taught in school. Read a book, read a textbook, accept it, get good grades, answer the questions correctly on the test, move yourself up through the ranks. I think it's more important to challenge what's in those textbooks. That's how you find the truth. Another great quote by Plato says, "Those who are able to see beyond the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses." And so that's where I place myself. I don't expect people to believe me. I say that all the time. I don't come across as an expert because I'm not. I'm simply observant, if you want to call it that. But I understand that if we can see past the shadows and the lies and the liars and the deceit, we shouldn't be expected to be believed, to be trusted, because people have been built up in the opposite fashion. They've been built up to think everything that they were taught is true, and anybody who comes in speaking anything different is obviously full of it. So we should recognize that, expect it. So, you know, Jeranism is the channel. Welcome to reality, as I like to call it. This is kind of the overview real quick. We're going to try and nail all these slides. There's a ton. I might not get to them all. If I don't, and I don't have a clock either, guys, just, you know. If I don't get to everything, then I'll do a video and we'll finish it off. So what I want to get to today is basically this overview. I want to talk about the lies, the media, the money, the education, the science versus the pseudoscience, the worldview, the medium, the tool, the start, the nonsense, the fantasy, and the ease of that fantasy, the astronauts, the lens, and then the answer. So let's start with the lies. The lies are everywhere, and they encompass everything. People know that. People have heard me talk about the multiple lies before, and they are many. Talking about sugar and tobacco science and public water fluoridation, global warming, climate change, GMOs, Monsanto. You have big pharma and medicine making us sick, right? Rather than healing medicine of plants and medicinal use of those plants. Healthy diet rather than doctors and their medicine. Health insurance industry and the medical malpractice that goes on. You have the biotechs, the pesticides, the EPA, the oil industry, the education system, false history that we're taught. Of course, Big Bang and evolution is an absolute and total farce. Common Core math is a joke. Student debt, and now the most recent college admission scams. You have the Federal Reserve banking system, which isn't even federal. Stock market and financial scams are everywhere. Is this a free society? I doubt it. With Google and Twitter and being censored on YouTube, you're no longer allowed to use your freedom of speech. Hollywood with their alien agenda, pushing a satanic message constantly. The music industry almost doing the same thing. Kidnapping, human trafficking, child sex exploitation is everywhere. The sexualization of minors. And justice system, right, of these lawyers. The government, which means to what? Govern your mind. The mainstream media is their tool, giving us the fake news, IRS, NSA, DOD, CIA, all those things. Newspapers and magazines just being another branch of that media. Government contracts, completely corrupt, false flags, covert government operations. The entire political scene with election fraud and dishonest polls, the entire left versus right paradigm, completely false. The military-industrial complex, this fake war on drugs, weapons, arms, and dealings by our very own CIA, unbelievable. The official 9/11 story, nobody's heard a bigger joke than that. And what makes you think, with all of those lies, that they're telling you the truth about space? A place you can't go, a place you can't test, you can't follow up on. You've got basically one agency and a bunch of government agencies behind them that tell us space is real. I think space is fake. In my movie, and I don't have the audio on this on purpose, but in my movie, please watch it if you want to see the audio here. It's very important audio. This is in the Intelligence Committee in 1975, where you have the CIA actually admitting that they have paid employees who work for our media agencies in both TV, newspapers, magazines. So imagine that. You've got the CIA who is paying people to work and present false information in the media. So make sure you watch that and you'll start to understand what's going on with the CIA. One of those things is indeed this quote. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Once you see that and you understand that's the CIA's purpose. The CIA is trying to confuse or lie or deceive the American public. So we need to start thinking, well, what impact does the CIA have on the things that we do, right? The CIA has the biggest impact on the media. We know that the media is telling us lies. And how do we know that? Well, they've got employees that are working for the CIA that are meant to, you'll know that this disinformation campaign is complete when everything we believe is false. So one thing about the lies that I missed was, the truth is the much stronger weapon overall than deceit. And we've been flooded with lies, and we really need to get back to the truth, back to what's important. And, the truth takes time. So I think we should all give yourselves an applause for what we've done in 4 years. Or 5, if you want to say that. I think it's amazing. Sometimes we're a little too hard on ourselves. I think we really need to be impressed with what we've done. Look at everybody who's shown up here from all over the place. We've got people from New Zealand here. I mean, everywhere. It's just unbelievable. So I think what scares people most about these lies and the reason they have a hard time accepting them is because what does that lie say about the world we live in, right? What does it say about the education system that we sat through? What does it say about the mainstream media and the news that is constantly on TV, right in front of our faces, telling us lies? People get very scared about the world that we live in. I'm sure many people have seen this before, but let's look at the media, who, remember, is supposed to be doing things for us. They're supposed to be on our side. And we really want to get their real opinions. We don't want just the same words coming out of everybody's mouth, do we? But that's not what we really get. We actually get the same words out of everybody's mouth.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's extremely dangerous to our democracy when you've got the CIA feeding lines and a script to every single news agency in the world. How easy is that to perpetrate lies? Think about that. Every person sitting at home on their couch watching the news, getting the same information, thinking it's news, thinking it's for your best interest, when it's not. It's for the controllers. We need to understand what's happened to the media, that they no longer work in the public interest as intended. So if the media is controlled, and we know that, if the media is controlled, then we can't believe what we see, right? We can't believe what we hear on the media, and obviously it would be foolish for us to do so. I don't know if anybody's seen this recently. I think it's important. I think it tells us a lot. This is the recent ABC News footage that has surfaced. It is a tape. Everybody seen this? Some people know. Let's watch this. So remember Jeffrey Epstein, who didn't kill himself. Of course you know that. And let's, oh, it's back. Good. Scared me. So let's watch this. This is a news anchor talking about the fact that she had the story on Jeffrey Epstein 3 years prior. 3 years. And ABC squashed the story. Why? Because they had too much information on the Clintons. Because they had information on the Queen or Prince Andrew and his dealings with underage children. And she's basically just going to tell us exactly what's going on. This is on a hot mic, if you know what that means. She's speaking off the air, but somebody caught it. The other thing that's crazy about this is they've already fired people over this leak. We should be embracing whistleblowers, people who bring stuff like this. This is what the news is supposed to be doing, right? What do they do instead? They fire people. So let's just listen.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything.
Listen to what she says here. Pretty crazy.
I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying, there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. I had it all 3 years ago.
This is interesting here.
The thing is that we would make access to all of these high-profile.
Well, then I got a little concerned about why I couldn't get on. So, do I think he was killed? 100%. Yes, I do. Because he made his whole living blackmailing people. Yeah.
So even the news anchor thinks that he was killed.
There were a lot of men in those planes, a lot of men who visited that island, a lot of powerful men who came into that apartment.
So we're called crazy for believing in conspiracy theories when the news media believes in conspiracy theories.
I knew immediately.
And look at this.
And they made it seem as though he made that suicide attempt 2 weeks earlier, but his lawyers claimed that he was roughed up by his cellmate around the neck. That was all like to plant the seed, and then that's why I really believe it, like really believe it.
So what that tells us is that the media is protecting their own interests. They are fake news, okay? They're protecting their own interests. They said, oh, we wouldn't be able to get an interview with Kate and William, so we couldn't go forward with the Epstein story. So think about the amount of children that were raped or sexually exploited over 3 years because ABC didn't want to run a story because they wouldn't be able to interview, the royal family. Whose interest is that protecting? Is it protecting our interests? Remember what the media is supposed to be. Remember, the media is supposed to be helping us. So let's talk about the money, because the money gets really interesting, and if people don't understand the money, then you don't understand the lie. $56 million a day, of course, you've heard that 56 million times probably this weekend. But we need to talk about how big the space economy is, okay? That is the music industry at $19.3 billion in 2018. The movie industry is $43 billion in 2018, okay? We can even add to the movie by going with home entertainment. That includes your Blu-ray players, your DVD players, your home entertainment systems, your TVs. Even with all that, we're still at $136 billion for all of movies. That's box office, that's theaters, that's every movie made in Hollywood, okay? That's how much that entire industry is worth. The video game industry, $137 billion, one of the biggest industries that there is. We can add those all together, combo of everything music that you've ever seen music, home entertainment, movies, box office, Hollywood, video games. That includes on your apps, on your phone, Xbox, PlayStation. That's the space industry. $410 billion. So when people ask why the lie, well, what good does it do? What difference does it make? Well, it makes a huge difference to those that are involved. NASA, the people they pay, JPL, the organizations that they deal with, all these other countries. And again, this is a worldwide economy. Absolutely insane. Think of the money that goes on with like the James Webb Space Telescope that was supposed to be launched, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Current cost, $11 billion. One thing I looked up recently is I said, okay, $11 billion for this James Webb Telescope. How many cameras will it have on it? Take a guess. How many cameras? 0. 0 cameras. It will have an imaging system to take pictures of the deep sky, but not a camera to see if it deploys, not a camera to see the Earth. If you're putting something up in space, why not have a camera on it? Think of how cheap cameras are. We've seen everybody running around with their cameras and their GoPros. They're so cheap. They even have cameras now, if you've seen, or phones, that will take pictures of the stars. How do we not have pictures of the stars from the ISS? It's as if NASA gets $56 a day. And even at that much, I'd expect a little bit more. The education, or what I call the indoctrination, is clearly a battle between two worldviews. I was talking to a few people about what I think about evolution and the fact that if you understand that evolution is taught in schools and it's a complete and total farce, hopefully that starts to tell you that it's possible across the board. I think I was talking to Danny Faulkner about it, and he didn't really seem to agree with me on that. He said, oh, well, they're not teaching lies, Jeran. They really think that the Earth is blankety blank billion years old, 4.54 billion years old. And I totally disagree. Do the teachers think they're telling lies? No, the teachers are teaching what they think is the truth. It's what they were taught. It's what's in the school books. But at the very highest level, you're telling me you don't think it's a worldview of people who hate the Creator, who hate anything that the Bible says and just say, no, anything that the Bible says, we'll say the opposite. Earth 6,000 years old? 6 billion. You know? Oh, this came first? Nah, the other came first. We've been right. You've been wrong the whole time. As I said, we know that they are purposely, at least at the highest levels, teaching children lies. One thing that people need to also recognize that they don't teach you in school is that you could really map the Earth on anything, right? If you think about a NASA control room, up against the wall there will be a big map of the Earth, but it's a flat map, laid out kind of like a Mercator projection, and you get the orbits that kind of look like sine waves. That can be mapped as anything. It still allows them to control what they think they're looking at and what they're watching, but it's all the same thing. You can really do it on anything. You could map the Earth on a pyramid, right? You could have a pyramid, you map the Earth on it. Now, of course, we would go out and we would say, well, there's no edges. I can't find any edges, so we could disprove the pyramid theory. But again, they'd be able to come back with some mathematics and say, oh, well, actually, pyramids at their point bend space-time. And just because of the massive amount of pressure at each point, we just don't realize it. It kind of unfolds it for us. So they could really teach us anything. H.L. Mencken said that the plain fact is that education itself is a form of propaganda. Absolutely. It's the easiest way. And guess what, folks? It's free. All you have to do is just send your children all day to the free public indoctrination camps. A deliberate scheme to outfit the pupil, not with the capacity to weigh ideas, but with a simple appetite for gulping ideas ready-made. The aim is to make good citizens, which is to say docile and uninquisitive citizens. I've talked about this all the time. Think about yourself being in power. You're a dirtbag. You've got a bunch of money. Are you going to teach children the truth? Do you want them to grow up and challenge you for your power, to come after your family's money? Or do you want to teach them to be good little citizens? Stay quiet. Stay in your home. Don't do anything crazy. Let me keep my money. Let me keep my power. One of the things that they continue to teach in school at an age where nobody can figure it out and understand it is gravity. And this may seem silly with the strings, but I want to watch this little short clip from Bill Nye the Science Guy's old program. This is what they're showing kids, and it's funny. Oh, no sound.
Rolled it up into a ball.
There you go.
One sock, not two, one. Taken a piece of string, wrapped it around the sock, stuck it through this toilet paper roll, tied the string onto a plastic bag with an apple in it.
What?
Watch what happens.
Watch what happens. Okay. What the hell's that?
See the apple?
Yeah.
That's like the sun. And the sock is like Earth.
What?
The string is kind of like the sun's gravity holding the Earth in orbit.
Why do you have an apple in a bag and a toilet paper roll and a string and a sock and you tie it all together? And kids must think that that means something, right? We all sat in school and we're like, yes, that's it. We know about gravity now. It's just like a sock being twirled around an apple. It makes a lot of sense to me. So, and of course, with gravity, and everyone's probably heard this quote before, I won't go through the entire thing, but this is by Isaac Newton, and if you read it carefully, you'll notice that Isaac Newton said, don't ascribe that nonsense to me. I don't want anything to do with that. Please, the idea of activity at a distance is insane. Do not subscribe that to me. I want nothing to do with it. And what do we all taught now? Oh, he's so brilliant. Newton, he came up with the the gravitational equations, and no, he didn't want anything to do with it. And he even said here, that it's so great an absurdity to him that I believe that no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. And yet, they teach it to children as if it's fact. So, this is what happens. Poor kids, just having to constantly get the NASA propaganda. So let's talk about the science versus the pseudoscience. We have to ask ourselves, which belief is truly scientific? Which belief is pseudoscientific? You know, the one based on empirical evidence, the one based on observations and actual experiments, or the one that's simply built on mathematical transform equations and garbage. Science has become a religion. Anybody who doesn't see that, get out. Get out right now. We know science is constantly changing, right? Imagine the glory of having something that you could just say is so true, but it may not be true tomorrow, but if we change it, well, then it's true tomorrow. So, you see there, guess I can't walk over there, it keeps disappearing. Thank you. So do photons really exist? Or this one here is, have we ever seen an atom? No. Just search that on Google. Has anyone ever seen an atom? The answer is no. But we're taught not just about atoms, and remember, the atom is the smallest thing that there could possibly be, right? It's the tiniest little thing that could ever be in existence, and they tell you what's inside the atom. Think about that. Oh, there's things orbiting, electrons, but the atom is the smallest thing that we can ever see or dissect, but you're going to tell me what's inside of it? We have now Yale computer scientists coming out and saying that they quit believing in Darwin's theories. We have physics professors telling them that science actually points to a designer. We've got science saying now, do photons really exist? So remember, we're teaching these things to children as if they're fact and they're positive and they're so true. We look at pseudoscience just so we understand what exactly it means. Pseudoscience consists of statements and beliefs or practices that are claimed to be scientific and factual, but are incompatible with the scientific method. All right? So I know we have some people like Michio Kaku. He's about to tell us about the scientific method. Let's listen carefully to whether or not he thinks that they're using the scientific method. Of course, he'll say yes. He's a scientist. He's a physicist. He's going to say that they follow the scientific method. I'm sure of it. Let's listen.
You're not going to believe this. In science, we always say that you make observations, you have a theory, you go make more observations, and it's a very, very tedious process.
Right.
Wrong. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method.
What?
In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method.
Holy smokes. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. Great. I want to hear all about your worldview. I want to hear all about the fact that you think that, you know what happened 1/1000th of a trillionth of a billionth of a second after the Big Bang, and you don't follow the scientific method. It's not science. Which one is pseudoscience? The one that just said that they don't follow the scientific method? Maybe we need to go back one more time just to see. Pseudoscience consists of statements, beliefs, or practices that are claimed to be both scientific and factual but are incompatible with the scientific method. He just said nobody in my field uses the scientific method. So thank you very much, Michio Kaku, for flat out proving that what you're doing, what you're talking about, what you're teaching is pseudoscience. You have somebody like him, and everybody's seen this quote before. If you've seen the principle, talks about how far off they are in the mismatch. Oops, one more, go back here. Yeah, there you go. In cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120th. That is that number, by the way. Sometimes you might just hear 10 to the 120 and you don't really recognize what that number is. That's what 10 to the 120th is, and it's the largest mismatch between theory and the experiment in the history of science. I agree. Nikola Tesla, of course, and thank you to whoever gave me the Nikola Tesla shirt out there. Thank you. Says, today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander through equation after equation, eventually building a structure that has no relation to reality. If you think E equals MC squared has any relation to reality, get out. Get out. Go to the other room or something. Maybe they're talking about that there. So when I talk about the worldview, I think it's very important that we understand that the scientists that we've been told to believe in have a different worldview than we do. They have a worldview where there can't possibly be a creator. We can't possibly be important. We can't possibly be the center. And they've built an entire scientific enterprise and education system around a worldview. Okay? That's the problem. Such a great thing. Greg, I hope you're in here. Maybe Greg's in the other room. I don't know. But InfoWars finally starting to cover some of these topics. I really appreciate it. Let's listen to just thank you. Give him a round of applause. Because if anybody knows it's not an easy subject to talk about, it's me. I understand that you're going to get hate for it. You're going to get email after email calling you crazy. You're going to get comment after comment saying that you should, never reproduce, that your family should be gassed. These are the kind of comments I get, that I should be put into a gas chamber and exterminated. So I understand that it's tough to bring these topics up, but once they start coming up and once people start looking into them, they're going to recognize the worldview. Let's watch just a short little section of his most recent video. I don't know if it's the most recent, pretty recent video.
We seem to be conditioned to think that the issue has been scientifically settled, but this is not the case. Our most popular scientists recognize that the geocentric model, where the Earth is at the center of the universe, is observably accurate.
Right. We can take either the Earth or the Sun as the center of the solar system. When you look at the CMB map, you realize that we're truly the center
Edwin
of the
Hubble
universe.
and Stephen Hawking went as far as to say that they reject the geocentric model not based on scientific reasoning, but rather because they find the thought of being at the center of the universe to be emotionally disturbing.
We believe it only on the grounds of
Physicist
modesty.
George Ellis stated that you cannot disprove the geocentric model. You can only exclude it on philosophical grounds. The Michelson-Morley experiment in the 1880s proved the Earth was stationary, and Albert Einstein claimed this was a serious embarrassment and intended to disprove it with his relativity theory, but later admitted that he had failed to do so.
He's come to the belief that he cannot
We're
determine
conditioned
the
to
motion
think
of the
the
Earth.
heliocentric model is scientifically superior to the geocentric model. But when we apply scientific reasoning, we discover that this is not true.
Right? Just like I just said, when you talk about the scientific method, all of a sudden we lose some of these topics because these topics that they're talking about are pseudoscience, and they're based around a worldview. This quote, and I probably will put it in every presentation I ever give, because it's really one of the most important quotes that led me to the understanding when I have somebody like George Ellis, a top 5 physicist in the world, maybe top 10, I don't know, when he tells you that they can only exclude it on philosophical grounds, and then he says at the end, what I want to bring into this is the fact that we are using philosophical criteria, which is what I'm talking about. It's a philosophical criteria is a worldview, in choosing our models, and then the next sentence is the most important one. A lot of cosmology tries to hide that. Remember, cosmology is a science. Why would there be branches of science that are actively hiding things from you? Unless it's about a worldview. They're pushing their worldview and ignoring the one that matches observations, the alternate, the one that we are the center, we are important, we are created. All the observations match, they are the same, no matter which way you look at it. This is the Edwin Hubble quote that he put in here, and I've read this before too, but remember, this is Edwin Hubble. He's the one that came up with the fact that things are redshifting. That's why we see galaxies moving away from us. And yet, all the observations told him that we were the center, right? If everything's moving away from you in all directions, that tells you that you're the center. Instead, he came up with this idea, well, no, we could technically be on a balloon. We could be a bunch of spots on a balloon. If you took a bunch of spots and put them on a balloon and started to blow that balloon up, all the spots would get further away from each other. And therefore, maybe everything is the same. Maybe we're not the center. Everybody sees the center. But let's read what this says. Such a condition would imply that we occupy a unique position in the universe. This ancient conception of a central Earth. He says, this hypothesis cannot be disproved, but it's unwelcomed. Is that scientific? It's unwelcomed. Only be accepted in a last resort. He says, therefore, we disregard it. Why? The observations match it, but they're going to disregard it. Because the unwelcomed position of a favored location, meaning that we're the center, it's unwelcome. The unwelcome position of putting us in the center must be avoided at all costs. Such a favored position is intolerable. Therefore, in order to restore homogeneity and to escape the horror of being the center of the universe, then we must compensate it by spatial curvature. There seems to be no other escape. How about this quote too by Einstein? If the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. Sounds like pseudoscience to me. So I also wanted to talk about the medium, because that's an important place to start when we talk about NASA. Why? Because someone's trying to tell you that they are going places that we know don't exist. Because you can't have a vacuum next to gas pressure Earth. Nature abhors a vacuum, okay? It's just can't exist, because anytime there's a vacuum, as we see here, is a postulate a postulate attributed to Aristotle, who articulated a belief that was criticized later, but he said the nature contains no vacuums, even though we're told, think of how tiny they tell us the Earth is, and that the entirety of everything around us is a vacuum, yet it's been voiced here that nature can't contain a vacuum because the denser surrounding material would immediately fill the space, would immediately fill the void. So remember that this is people that are trying to tell you they know what happened 10 to the negative 43 second after the Big Bang. It's just crazy to believe that that medium can exist. You can't have it. But people say, but Jeran, we have a gas pressure gradient. That's what you don't, it's like, yeah, I understand that. How do you have gas pressure without a container? It's not, I don't care if you have a gas pressure gradient, you added a word, big deal, you're still missing the point. You still have gas pressure. Outer space to me is simply not a place that you can go. It's not a place you can float around. It's a fantasy conception. And why do people believe it? Well, as Hitler said, make a lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. And that's how easy it is to convince people that we're on a spinning ball as we stand right now. We're rocketing through space in a vacuum. It just can't exist. But again, if you keep telling that lie and you put it in school books, it's very easy to get people to believe you. The tool, and what I mean by that is NASA is used as a tool. It's an asset of the CIA from day one. You know, the CIA used to float the ideas of Operation Northwood-style false flag attacks. Basically, they wanted to stir the war effort. If people don't know this story, the picture there is of a plane that was painted with NASA markings and given a serial number, and that's when Francis Gary Powers was shot down during a CIA spy flight in 1960. And then immediately the next day, NASA came out with a story saying, oh, well, the U-2 that crashed was conducting weather research. But then, so they painted it with U-2, they called the media by, and they said, here, this is the plane that crashed. Well, a day later, the captured pilot that was captured in Russia actually confessed, and showing the NASA and CIA were just complete liars. He confessed to being on an espionage mission by CIA. So we can see that NASA is just used as an asset to the CIA. NASA is all about imagination, about the awe of space and getting people involved in that. George A. Keyworth was the science advisor to Ronald Reagan. He said to Congress in 1985, all government agencies lie part of the time, but NASA is the only one I've ever encountered that does so routinely. Okay? How about this quote I found from a Los Angeles Times 1987 article or something like that, the middle quotation there, he says, all of the organizations that I have dealt with, the only one that lied is NASA. Science advisor Keyworth said today. The reason they lie, of course, is because they are wrapped up in a higher calling. Can you believe that? In their eyes, these are white lies. They tell lies in order to do what has to be done, because in the end, the result will be for the betterment of the public, so they are not really lying from evil, but nevertheless, they're lying. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. One of the things I found recently is this article. I don't know if you guys have ever heard, there's some scientist named Grimes that did some report on how long it would take for a hoax as big as the moon landings to come out. And he basically said, and this is what you'll see everywhere, is that within 5 years, the moon landings would have been exposed. Okay? So I've heard that said over and over again, and people on Globe Believer channels will always say that. And I said, well, let me go look at this article really carefully and see, is that really what he says? So you look at the article, and he says that for a plot to last for 5 years, that all of NASA, when he said that it would last only 4 years, he was saying that all of NASA was in on it. Well, not one of us believes that. Not one person believes that everybody at NASA was involved in the moon hoax. So I started to say, well, did the numbers change? Well, he keeps going down. He says for any plot to last 5 years, only 2,500 people would have to be on the conspiracy. For it to last more than 10 years, you have to have fewer than 1,000 people in on the conspiracy. And for it to last 100 years, you have to have less than 125 collaborators. Well, that's exactly what we're saying. We're saying that only the astronauts and very few people knew. How do we know that? What about all those guys, Jeran, sitting at the consoles? Didn't they know what was going on? Wouldn't they know? They're sitting looking at data. Well, how about Apollo Flight Commander Gene Kranz, who told us in the late 60s our simulation technology had progressed to the point where it became virtually impossible to separate the training from actual missions. The simulations became full dress rehearsals for the missions down to the smallest detail. It tested out the crews and controllers' responses to normal and emergency evacuations, checked out the exact flight plan and procedures, and it says down at the bottom quote there, the simulations were so real that no controller, so nobody sitting at any console or any computer, could discern the difference between the training and the real mission. So then you have to start looking at the NASA missions, and you say, is there anything else that leads me to believe that possibly there was some chicanery going on? How about the fact that they never plugged the live feed into the news agencies? They said, oh, you want to see the moon landing? Come to our facility, and you can film it off of a TV screen. So you have one input coming from who knows where, and you've got all the media who are actually standing there with video cameras filming off of a screen. That's what we got for the moon landings. So there's nobody, based on this guy Grimes' study, if there was less than 125 people who knew about the moon landing conspiracy, it could last 100 years. So unfortunately, we've probably got another 50 years that we're going to have to deal with that lie. You could talk about Kubrick and NASA. Everybody knows that story. Very important if you understand it and see what went on around that time with 2001, A Space Odyssey, and what happened with Eyes Wide Shut. Very important to know that Eyes Wide Shut has a lot of clues and interesting information in there. He demanded in his contract that that movie was released on July 16, 1999. Why? Because it was exactly 30 days to the date of the moon landings. Is that a hint? Is he trying to tell us something there? The other thing was 2 days or 4 days after he finished filming that, he died. So he never even got to see the movie released, but it was released as per contract on July 16, 1999. For 2001, A Space Odyssey, we also know what happened with The Shining. You know what I think is interesting? Because The Shining, I think, has a lot to do with the moon, right? There's so many clues in there that tell us that that's the case. And look at the name of the movie, The Shining. What do we all think shines? The moon. You have Danny, who stands up wearing the Apollo 11 shirt. This is not in the book. It's not in, basically, if you don't know, Stephen King wrote the book The Shining. Stephen King didn't like the movie. Why? Because of all the changes. He said, what are all these changes for? Why didn't he go off the book for the most part? A lot of changes. Like I said, the name itself. How about the fact that the actual room in the book is 217, not 237? So why did he make that change? Well, the moon is 237,000 miles away. Was it a possible confession? We know Danny wore the Apollo 11 shirt. He's sitting at the pad that looks just like the launch pad. He stands up, he goes to 237, and he's never the same. Changes him completely. We also have the character in the movie named Billy Gibson, who met Jack in room 237, very sinister character. There is no Billy Gibson listed on IMDb, but there is a Bill Gibson. The one crazy thing about the Bill Gibson listing is he's the director of the official documentary of the moon landings, 1969 Footprints on the Moon, Apollo 11. You tell me, is there something hidden there? Then that's when Jack descends into madness after he goes into room 237. There's an eagle on the shelf in the manager's office. He changed. Another thing that's not in the book is the idea of the twins. And, the twins mean Gemini. Is it because of the Gemini program? The Photoshop at the end of Jack, everybody's seen it. He's making the Baphomet hand signal. And I think that the date on the photographs is 1920-something, which is impossible if you follow the movie story. But it also is showing you that you can easily Photoshop people into scenes. That's basically what the end of the movie's about. How about the movie Capricorn 1? Everybody seen it? If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Please do. I think you'll see it after this. It's written by Peter Hyams. He wrote the script in 1972. Okay, can't walk over there. He wrote the script in 1972, and he was a reporter for CBS TV. He wrote the script in 72. Why? Because he was in charge of filming the moon stuff. And he started asking himself the question, well, wait a second. Is it possible that a fraudulent space act could be committed? He said, absolutely it is. He says, I was thinking how easy it would be to manipulate an event in the television age. All right, you couldn't invent the Olympics, which we know, right? Because people actually attend the Olympics. But he says, but because there would be too many people watching. But there was one event of a really enormous importance that had almost no witnesses, and the only verification we had that anyone reached the surface of the moon. And then he tells us, did the early part of the Vietnam War teach us anything? He says, think of it. A country was bombing another country for 8 months without anybody knowing about it. Think of all the planes involved, all the barracks that had to be built, all the beds that needed to be made, all the meals that had to be cooked. My idea was peanuts besides that, and much smaller in scope and probability. What he tried to do is he tried to pitch this movie, and over again, they told him to get out. Say, get out of here. We don't want anything to do with the movie. It wasn't until he made a few other movies, and they started making money, that a British company picked it up and said, okay, we'll produce it. But no American company wanted anything to do with that movie. So check it out if you don't know what it's about them faking a mission to Mars. One of the funny things, if you look in the lower left-hand corner of the movie image there, it's funny that it's Mars, but that's a lunar lander on the moon. But it's called Capricorn 1. It was about a fake Mars mission. What he says there is, he says, and remember, this is somebody who worked for CBS TV, eventually quit to make this movie. He says, we sit there watching this box all day, talking about the TV, and somehow we believe what it tells us because we see it. We're trained, conditioned in that way. I know it can be a very biased machine because I've worked for it. I worked for it during Vietnam, for instance, back in the 60s. Before I went, there were all these televised interviews with soldiers who kept saying, it may be a dirty little war, but it's the only one we've got. Come over here, see the great job we're doing. Once I got there, I found out nothing but guys saying, get me the hell out. This is just more stuff about the media. telling people that, oh, our troops are loving the war and they're doing it for the right reasons and you should contribute. And yet, when you go there and you find out all these soldiers are there, they don't want anything to do with it. So this guy saw all that, saw the moon landings, and then made the movie Capricorn 1. And he says at the end here, just don't believe everything you see, don't disbelieve it, but don't believe it solely on the basis that it's in front of your eyes, because here in this movie, I show how it's possible to alter what you see. I don't think that's a paranoid point of view, and neither do I. I probably could go on forever, guys, just so you know, and I don't have a clock. So I'm going to keep going until somebody pulls me. All right, thank you. All right. So let's talk about the start, you know. NASA has been used as a CIA asset from day one. It's a propaganda source. If you don't know about Wernher von Braun, you should. Obviously, I think a lot of people do. I get a lot of people telling me, well, they don't think Wernher von Braun was a Nazi. They don't think he started NASA, and they really need to do that research themselves, and they will see exactly what I'm trying to say. Let me see here. So we know what he did with Disney, right? And they don't realize that it was Wernher von Braun and John Bruce Medeiros who were at the helm of the Army Ballistic Missile Agency when it became NASA in 1958. And of course, we know 1958 also happens to be a year before the Antarctic Treaty. Was it all done for a reason? We don't know. So we get into the nonsense, is what I'll call it, and there's a lot of it, right? The entire space program, in my opinion, is simply entertainment for the animals on the animal farm. Fortunately, that's us. But it's just entertainment for us, and how do we know? Because they hide these constant symbols and signals in there. Number one thing, I cannot believe that the NASA Medal of Space Honor, or what is it called? Congressional Space Medal of Honor, is clearly a satanic star. Clearly. It's not even a question. It's just clearly that. Again, are they doing these things on purpose? I just, the last thing I would ever do if I'm a space or anything, let's put a satanic star on our medal. But you can see all the Illuminati symbolism, the pyramid with the removed capstone. It's just clear, constant. It's devils and dragons, and we see the snake tongue. It's just constant. If you can't see it, I don't know what you're thinking. Obviously, we've seen all these crazy videos. Here we go. Everyone's seen that. It's really sad that people will believe this stuff. It really is. And I could do a video or do a presentation one day where we just go through all this fakery, but I think there's so much out there of it, and hopefully you've seen it. All you need to do, Taboo Conspiracy has a great new video about the Apollo hoaxes and space hoax, and Paul on the Plane. There's so many people doing good work exposing this stuff, and if you follow the timeline, this is clearly what the possibilities for technology was in those days, right? This is what they had, pulling things on strings, making things spin, using these kind of rafters and buildings with blacked out sides, and it's really just nonsense, all of it. You see things like this out of NASA. If people don't know what these two images are, the first one on the left is an image that just came out recently where they said, oh, there's auroras on the North Pole of Jupiter. Well, then somebody went and found an image from 5 years before, the one on the right. It's the identical image. Maybe the colors changed, but look at every single cloud pattern. It's identical. So you're telling me that the weather on Jupiter 5 years later was exactly the same and they got the exact same picture and put no, you just have to recognize they simply took a little tool, blue tool, and put it on top. It's easy. Anybody who believes these images, Danny, if you're out there, Faulkner, you believe this? That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you understand or you recognize that the world is only 6,000 years old, but you believe this? It's baffling to me. It's baffling to me that you think that that's real and you don't understand that it can just be simple CGI. Who is going to check up on it? Who? Not us, How about the mushrooms that were found on Mars? Clearly, they had pictures in the exact same spot where these things weren't there, and then you saw pictures over the course of a couple weeks where these grew. And the story comes out and it just gets shoved away. People forget all about it. Why? Well, because mushrooms grow where? On Earth. Mushrooms grow on Earth. They don't grow on Mars, but by getting this information out there too much, people would start to recognize, maybe Mars is possibly on Earth. Anybody who believes we've got this remote control car driving around Mars, get out. This is a funny image that, and I think people have brought this up many times, Rob Skiba, other people, and I think it was Rob that actually found it, that when he took it into, now what I heard, when I first saw this, and I said, that's unbelievable, that's incredible. I said, maybe that's not an image from NASA, and you went looking, and NASA actually removed the image. Luckily, somebody caught this. This is the National Geographic, has the exact same image, and it says down there, photo courtesy of NASA. So you can't find that image anymore on NASA's site. They've removed it. Yet you can find the National Geographic saying, hey, here's this picture of the moon, and we got it from NASA. So good thing that they did that. Satellites in space? No. Satellites in the atmosphere, in the upper atmosphere. I don't think people realize how easy it would be to have everything that we have, GPS, you name it. All those things would be very easy with just a couple balloons. I was doing the math yesterday, and I think that with just like 6 balloons at 120,000 feet, you would be able to supply all of Texas with everything that satellites provide. Which one do you think is cheaper? Obviously, they've got satellites that they send up, they say cost $150 million, yet you can send up a balloon holding 8,000 pounds for probably 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Seems like a very good way to screw people out of money, if you ask me. So yeah, there's these other images. We know that they've been using balloons forever. Right now, above our heads, according to technicians and people that we've talked to, there's over 50,000 balloons. Did they teach you that in school? They didn't teach me that. They told me everything runs on satellites. Satellites provide everything. People think that their phones run on satellites. But yet we know that NASA has used their balloons for a long time. Google's now using the Google Loon balloon. The NASA balloon in the upper middle there is from a long time ago, and that supposedly went 1,000 miles high. But imagine if you had that up there, how easy it would be to send signals, bounce signals. Send a DirecTV signal up, bounce it to a bunch of people's home satellite dish, and people think that they're getting satellite TV. More just insane pictures. If you think that that's a satellite on the right, oh boy. If you think that that's the night view of Earth or a night view of Florida in the lower right, or if that's a satellite in the lower center, or if you think that's at the moon, I just can't see how you think that. We know that they've been faking this stuff, and they've got these simulations and these models, and they've been doing it forever. When you take it into computer enhancement and you can see the shadow on the ceiling, that wouldn't be there if we're talking about the blackness of space. There's nothing to reflect off of. How is that possible? We have, I know better to go over there. So yeah, we just know these guys are painting, details, so minute details. They've basically taken a photo of the moon, zoomed in as close as possible, gotten all their details down as best they could, and then they painted it on a sphere, a projector sphere. And then you've got the track around the side there where you can run a little car with a little camera. You can make the moon landing look possible easy. There's a lot of images like this. People come and say, well, Jeran, doesn't that look real? And you're looking at it, you're like, yeah, that does look pretty real. And then you see that, and you're like, oh, that's why. Probably real because it's made of clay. Seems to make sense to me. If you think this thing flew or will ever fly again or is there, curtain rods and gold foil and I don't know what that is, cardboard and duct tape and maybe. Yeah, it does. We see these kind of videos of these guys, dancing on the moon where clearly they should be falling down if they're not connected to some sort of string, connected to some sort of balloon. A lot of people have different opinions on what exactly is going on there. I'm somebody who tends to think that they're either jumping with a balloon on their back. Something I've wanted to try before. I don't know how possible that would be. It would have to take a room like this, but imagine you strap up a nice helium balloon to yourself and see what it would like. You just need to play with the weight of it until basically you're at 1/6 the weight, right? If you're going to tell people that it's 1/6 gravity on the moon, tie a balloon to me, put me on a scale until I'm 1/6 of my weight, and then let me jump around and see how that looks. Something maybe in the future. I found this, when you go off and you're watching this thing, remember supposedly they have this camera from the moon, it's panning, it's showing it. But clearly if you look at the left, and the video's not that great, but if you look at the left, that's the view from the cabin, but from the ground, the thing clearly tips over. And remember, these guys were in there, they didn't even have a seat. There's no chairs in that LEM, or the part that took off. And if it tipped over, they would fall on each other. Neil, Buzz would be on top of each other. when you see simulations like this and you see that they're just hung from rafters, it makes it make a lot more sense when you see all their plans for their projector spheres and their docking simulators, and they're always taking place in these planispheres where it'd be very easy to fake, just too easy. You've got the lie hustlers, or otherwise known as the Mythbusters, right? Sorry. The Mythbusters. One of the things that they came out and said is that the lunar laser reflectors, the retro reflectors, are proof of the moon landings, and they always seem to fail to admit that in 1962, 7 years before they put the reflectors there, that they had multiple colleges that bounced beams back from the moon. So it can't be proof that you went to the moon if you're able to do something now that you were able to do 7 years before you supposedly went there. If we do need some proof that the Tesla Roadster is in space, I found this. There it goes. So Dave, you were wrong. Clearly the Tesla is in space. And so let's talk a little bit about the fantasy and the ease of that fantasy. I mean, Mars is easy to fake. Put a couple cameras up in northern Canada, be very easy. For me, the biggest one is the ISS. Obviously, that wouldn't be so easy to fake if people paid attention to what exactly they're showing us, and we'll talk about that in a second. One of my favorite new quotes is by Immanuel Kant, who said, "Appearance, as long as it's employed in experience, produces truth, but the moment it transgresses the bounds of experience and consequently becomes transcendent, it produces nothing but illusion." And if you really think about that quote and you start to realize that, yeah, that if you see something off in the distance and it can produce truth as long as you can experience that item. So what have they done? They've lied to us by making you think that you're experiencing these things. Go to Florida and you can watch a rocket launch. You can watch the shuttle launch. And when you do that, people get confused because they say, okay, wait, appearance, as long as I can experience it, produces truth. And they think that that's what it's truth. But what you fail to realize is you're not really experiencing it. They're faking it. They're putting it on TV. They're showing you in web videos. It's not real. And they say that, the moment it transgresses the bounds of experience, which we need to recognize what that means, that we're never going to experience a planet. You're never going to experience space travel. You're never going to experience galaxies or galaxies crashing or supernovas or how much does a supernova weigh or how much a nebula weighs. And so they tell you all these things, and you need to recognize that they're beyond the bound of experience, and so they really produce nothing but illusion. It's just simply not true. This is a video that people have seen me show before, but I just wanted to show the absolute ease. Oops, did I go too far? I did. Sorry, we're going to try and get this to play. There we go. So in this video, I just try and show people, and I should have cut it a little bit, but it's just of my old house. But really, I want people to see how incredibly easy it is to fake the things that people tell me. You know, space is real because we can see the ISS. Space is real because we get video that's supposedly of the ISS. This is of me in my living room. This cost me 99 cents. It's 99 cents to buy a green poster board at a Dollar Tree or something. And I simply taped the green poster board behind the window, right? And you use chroma key, and you can produce whatever you want. So, and there's no seams, it looks perfect. And remember, I'm doing this with 99 cents. Imagine if I had $56 million a year, not even a day.
That's a $56 million view.
Gee, yeah, exactly, for 99 cents. So I think that once you realize how easy it is to fake these things, and it seems like it's, you know, the ISS came out right at the same time, about 20 years ago, that these kind of things like chroma key came out. Green screening, so it all coincides with the timeline too perfectly for me, too perfectly, that we didn't get really any good views like that from space until the time frame came out that, you know, green screen and chroma key started coming. So when you see these images from the ISS, you know, you realize that, yeah, maybe that looks a little better than my version, but my version was 99 cents. So I don't expect it to look as good. But it'd be very easy to fake that, and it looks the same. Hey, can you tell if there's, you know, the sides look fine? It all could be done with chroma key. It's very simple. And again, if we can't experience that view, if we can't go out there and look at it ourselves, then all we're producing is nothing but illusion, right? You get pictures like this where clearly we know that they're using fisheye lenses. Beyond fisheye lenses, they're like egg eye lenses, or I don't know, it's just egg, and you can see the curving of the craft there. It's just all fisheye lenses. We get very confused by these, people do. It's just insane that people believe that's a satellite or the Hubble. I don't believe it. So I wanted to talk about the ISS. You know, it's been in orbit, like I said, for 20 years, and there's no 24/7 camera, as I've said many times, showing the Earth below. And anybody who can't recognize that there's a huge problem with that you've got this craft that's supposedly in orbit, and what do they tell us? That they're switching cameras, or that it can't pick up from the night side of Earth. However, they have 8-hour spacewalks where the whole thing is on the screen. So how are you able to have a spacewalk where the feed is continuous for 8 hours, but you can't even keep a continuous feed for longer than 90 minutes on the ISS? It absolutely makes zero sense unless they're lying, and they know that you'd be able to see from the ground that they were lying, and that's why during the day you can't see the ISS above you, but they'll show you pictures from the ISS during the day. And at night, when you can see the ISS, they won't show you any of the lights on Earth. Why? Because doing one or the other could allow you to expose it. And that's where you need to recognize that the only reason that you would do that is to really confuse people, right? Oh, you can see it during the night? Okay, well, then it doesn't show lights, because you'd be able to verify. You'd be able to match, and I think that's too difficult for them to do. Of course, you see articles like this that come out. NASA has attached HD cameras to the outside of the space station, and they stream it live 24 hours a day. No, they don't. It's just a complete and total lie. You have these images here that say this is either switching camera or experiencing a temporary loss of signal on the International Space Station. This is another image that's just CGI. I had somebody actually send this to me and tell me that they thought it was real, and did a little bit of research to find out, no, this is completely and totally fake. It is just CGI. Yeah, I know, you think, but again, this is very easy for somebody like Eru to do. Eru could do this in minutes. Give him $56 million a day, you know? The thing is, the problem that we have is that people think nowadays that they're not able to question facts. And that's the problem, because we've got now the world that if something is deemed a fact, which means it's in a school book, it's taught to you, it's told you as a fact, people basically fall and worship before it, right? And usually with no questions asked. They're just, well, yeah, oh, it's a fact, you can't argue it, I can't even question it. But people need to recognize that they don't need to accept facts. Okay, you don't need to. It's okay to question them. It becomes simple to get people to simply accept facts. This is a hard one to see. You might not be able to see it, but basically, I'm able to walk out with my iPhone from my garage, which is well lit, walk outside and see the ISS with my camera. But there's no camera on the ISS that can see any lights on Earth. If you just think about that, it doesn't make any sense. There's no way. It's a tiny little light. You've got entire city lights, okay? And you're able to just look up, and I'm able to see the ISS quite easily. They should be able to see lights. We know that they train in a pool, right? As I've said before, the one thing about NASA that we need to recognize is that for them, and this is why it's called NASA going nowhere since 1958, if you understand that they don't really need to go anywhere. They're able to do everything on Earth and just convince people. You know, we know we've got the pool. One of the things I've showed before, if you look at the Vitruvian Man in the upper left-hand corner, there's a rocket breaking through a glass dome, a glass ceiling up in the upper left. It's funny that that's on the wall at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. These other two images here just show you how easy it is to even use green screen in a pool. So you can start to see how easy it would be to have these little spacewalk missions. You've got the Earth rotating underneath it. It looks very believable, but I don't think that it is. And with filtered water, of course, they train constantly with scuba divers, which makes no sense. Once you get to space, guess what? There is no scuba diver. So when they're swimming around the pool, they've got scuba divers that are kind of carrying with them. You can see the scuba diver even in the painting, bringing a tool. What do I think's happening? I think those scuba divers are there even when we don't see them. They're just simply edited out. It's very easy. Again, just like a green screen, you can put that scuba diver in a green uniform. You would never see them. They'd be completely invisible. They could be carrying the astronauts around doing spacewalks. You would have no idea. You would have no clue. One of the reasons I know that they're using green screen is if you look at the bottom row of screens, the second screen, and there's also one a little bit further down, you can tell that they're using PNG. That's a PNG image. That's how you make green screen, right? You have the one form. It just tells me that there's no reason for them to do that if they're just watching them, act in a pool. This is another thing that's important to understand. I found this a while back. And don't worry, we're almost done. I'll actually
After
get through it all.
$60-odd billion spent for manned spaceflight by NASA, it has been determined that man is truly confined to this Earth. The incredible secret concealed from the tax-paying public by both NASA and its congressional masters is that man cannot participate in long space expeditions.
So that's from a documentary from 1967, I believe, where they're basically admitting that that human beings cannot live outside this Earth. They cannot travel in space, but yet NASA comes out and continually tells people that we can, we do. Again, for what reason? I don't know. They want people in the STEM research. They want people inspired and believing in the nation and how great the ingenuity is. This is what I challenge NASA to do. I mean, imagine how much ingenuity it would prove to the world and how great the United States would be if they simply sent a craft real quick, put a camera on the moon that I talked about before, and show the Earth. I mean, it'd be so ridiculously easy. So would traveling to the moon, if you really think about it. Really think about what they tell us they do. They basically say once you get a craft to a certain speed, that craft gets into an orbit, and from there it just goes in orbit, right? So okay, you build the rocket, you blast it off, it goes into orbit, it's orbiting. All you need to do from that point is fire one more time, fire it off towards the moon, and then you're just flying. You don't even need fuel. You're just out there in the vacuum of space, heading towards the moon. You might need to make a few course adjustments, which they do with their little hydrogen, splatter of things. And then you get to the moon and you land there, and you've done it before. You did it 50 years ago. There's no way that it would be, it's going to be till 2024. We threw away that technology. We can't do it anymore. It's just, if you believe that, you're simply falling for deception. When we talk about the astronauts, and I've always talked about should Armstrong be trusted, I don't have the volume on this just because I know you guys have heard it a million times, but maybe I don't even have the video. But everybody's seen the video that's there before is the one of him not swearing on the Bible. I've never understood this. I mean, if you asked me, Jeran, did you do a presentation in Dallas? And I said, yeah, I did. Just did. Swear on the Bible that you did. Okay, I'll swear on the Bible. Why would I, for what reason would I ever say no? And in that video, if you've never seen it before, you've got Bart Sibrel asking Neil Armstrong, swear on the Bible that you went to the moon. And he just won't even get close to him. He'll just back away. He then offers him $5,000 for a charity of his choice. He's got $5,000 in cash in his hand. Just swear on the Bible that you went to the moon. And he won't do it. And I've thought about it over and over again, and the only way that makes sense is if he didn't go. It's the only way. If you went to the moon, first of all, you'd love the $5,000 for a charity, and also, how easy would it be to swear on the Bible? But if you're brainwashed to think that you went and you're not really sure, maybe you've had some dreams that maybe I didn't go, maybe they use some brainwashing, maybe they use some hypnotism. With hypnotism, you can do anything to somebody, especially if they're open for it. So when I hear stories about 4,000 astronauts, 4,000 applicants, only one of 4,000 gets selected, it'll be very easy to bring these 4,000 people into the office and find the one that's the most ready to be hypnotized, the one that's most available to have their mind completely controlled with, think about Tavistock, think about some of these mind control MK Ultra stuff. Yeah, it'd be very easy. And what would that show us? Well, we would notice that the astronauts wouldn't be too smart, right? And that's what we see. The astronauts are brain dead. If you really think about it, I've never heard an astronaut be able to communicate well. And I certainly don't think I communicate well, but I also think that, I could go neck and neck with some of these astronauts, but I also don't think that I would be the number one out of 4,000 applicants. So when I see things like that, I just tend to believe that these are the people that are most available and ready for their mind to be controlled, and maybe they believe they went, maybe Armstrong believes he went. I don't know, with the Buzz here, and I like his shirt, he says, you can bet your ass we're liars. But he says, maybe I made that. He says, my mother, and I've talked about this before, but imagine, are we supposed to trust this person who tells us that my mother once took too many sleeping pills and my father had to rush her to the hospital? We all pretended that her overdose was accidental, but I think we knew that it wasn't the case. In May 1968, so we're talking about a year before he went to the moon, Mother's second attempt at an overdose proved fatal. Okay, so his mom killed herself. Even then, my family and I preferred living in denial and never openly spoke of how she died. We asked the coroner to list her death as a cardiac arrest, and the coroner graciously complied. So it just tells me that he's just okay with just lying. My mom died this way, but we told her this way, and you guys think we went to the moon. We really didn't, but believe what you want. We've all seen this image a million times. Watch the video. You can find they basically glitch out, and I've watched this video many times before. Nothing in the background glitches. I've seen glitches in live sporting events, and the whole screen glitches. There's never a play in football, if you watch a football game on TV, that something happens on the screen and all the players glitch out, but the screen stays fine, or the field. That doesn't happen. If you're going to have a glitch, you have a glitch of one of the feeds. Well, when you're looking at a football game, you're watching one camera showing the football game. It's one feed. When you're watching the ISS, I'm telling you, you're watching two cameras. You're watching one on the astronauts, and you're watching one that's on a green screen. And if one happens to glitch and the other does not, this is what you get. The background doesn't glitch out, just the astronauts do. Of course, we could talk about Apollo 1 and talk to these three astronauts and see what they think about NASA. Of course, you have Gus Grissom, who put the lemon on the lem, saying, I don't think if we can't communicate between each other, there's no way we'll be able to communicate between, from the moon. And then you have Thomas Ronald Barron. Please check out that video on my channel. I have an interview with Gary Corsair where he talks all about Thomas Ronald Barron, who was a whistleblower who came out and talked about NASA. Within a week of him testifying in front of Congress, he was killed. How was he killed? He was killed by a train. What's weird about that? The train is owned by NASA. What's weird about that NASA train? It was on a NASA-owned track. There's only one witness to that event, and the witness worked for North American. There's so many things that go on and on about that story that tell you that NASA took him out, and nobody's ever found that 500-page report that he submitted to Congress. It's since disappeared. So we talk about the lens, and what I mean by the lens is the way we see the world needs to change, in my opinion. We're seeing the world through an incorrect lens. We should know what lenses do. Of course, people think the Earth's a ball. They think that, they look at things this way. We need to recognize how the atmosphere works. As you see this image, as we get further away, things get lighter and lighter and lighter. One reason that, one of the arguments for flat Earth, or I hear a lot of people talk about it, but I don't really agree with it, I don't think we see through the moon. During the day when you look up and you see the moon, it kind of looks blue, and I think it's just a case of this happening. I could be wrong, but if you look at that, it'd be the same as somebody saying, I can see through that mountain. Well, you're not seeing through the far mountain. It's just blending in a little bit with the sky. I think the same thing goes on with the moon. Oops, let's go back one here. But just showing people, really when you look at this image here of a football field, it's the equivalent basically of what we see when we look outside, that at a certain distance, this particular night image, we just can't see any further. And it does look like you could live on a very tiny little sphere here. Somebody could say, oh, you live on that little sphere. But we know that that's not the edge of anything. There's just a lot more going on. So it's the same thing when you see something larger like this. And again, a lot of people may see that and say, oh, I see a curve. You don't recognize that we see in a circle, right? Our eyes are spheres. Everything is going to kind of give this bend, but it's because, and if you turn this way, then the bend would become this way. A lot of people take that as being a sphere. It's not a sphere. You have the ball earth logic. I don't know if anybody's seen this video where this guy claims to prove the curvature of Earth by using his bike and two sticks. So he makes an entire video about it. He drives a certain distance and says he gets the different shadows at the two locations. And again, this happens when people don't understand the flat Earth idea, don't understand that things are different. Why does he not understand? Well, I'll show you in a second, but I thought this image was great. This is from his video, and it says down there that Curtis Bate uses an orange to demonstrate a scale model. It's not a scale model, first of all, but pretty funny that's said. But let me just show you a quick video here that explains to you how easy it is to show why you have sticks and shadows. So remember that this is my countertop, a granite countertop. Of course, it's completely level and flat. And with a small localized light source, you can see there that there's clearly two different size shadows on two different sticks. So the problem with this is that people who think that they can prove that the Earth is curved with their bike and two sticks don't understand that flat earthers don't believe that the sun is 93 million miles away. So does it make a difference if the sun is smaller? Does it make a difference if the sun is closer? Of course. It makes every difference in the world. So somebody who makes a video like that, excuse me, is just seeing through a wrong lens. They're just seeing through an incorrect lens. So, in my opinion, what is the answer? Well, I think it's kind of simple. I think that we need to get back to what's important, that each one of us is precious. We need to not fall and bow to the wizardry that they're putting in front of us every day, and everybody here is doing their part in that. So I really do thank everybody for coming, and I hope that you continue to watch my videos and everybody else's videos. You continue to challenge the things that we say. Don't ever trust me. Don't trust Bob. Don't trust Dave. Don't trust Iru. Listen, take the good things that we say, the things that match what you see, and hopefully we're changing your life a little bit. I've gotten so many emails, countless emails from people telling me that their lives have changed because of some of this stuff, and there's no better feeling in the world than hearing that, so thank you guys for that. And lastly, I do want you to know that there is 2 or 3 celebrities that I can't tell you. I wish I could. I really wish I could. But I've had 2 or 3 celebrities that have contacted me and told me that they are on board, that they want me to keep going with what I'm doing, that they wish they could come out and say so, and that they can't. And I've had to promise them that I wouldn't say anything. Hopefully, in months or a year, we'll hear more. But I just wanted to let people know out there that there is people out there, celebrities, people that you would be shocked to find out are on board with this, and they can't come out yet. I understand that. We have a conversation. We talk about, why they can't. But I just want to let you guys know, because that's something you don't know. You might think, I wonder why nobody's coming out. I wonder why it's not getting bigger. And it is. It's just going to take time. Like I said, truth takes time. So sorry I went too long, guys, but it was fun, and I appreciate everybody being here, and thank you so much. It's been fun. Thanks. Thank you.
Good job, man.
Thanks.
Good job.